Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It is May 27th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and wild day. This was a great trading day because this is a super strong trend working lower here, and then on top of that, you got a super strong trend right back up again, and there's a nice clear channel working down here. There's actually a trend line up through here. I don't have it on there because I was trading the shorter term stuff or watching the shorter term stuff. But there is a trend line. It just doesn't really, you can kind of see it right up through there. It doesn't really, well, it could help you to have this trend channel. But it just doesn't fit real neatly. And by the time you get these next two swings, the day's over. So I put it on there real quickly just to show you, but you don't really need that. You're better off just to, we went sideways here and then started another channel up, and then we went sideways into the 2 o'clock hour, and that's really all that matters anyway. So, but coming down, we had a very clear two-tiered channel. We had an overshoot, a break, moved to a new low. We had this channel working up, and this big quick sell-off. I still don't know really. I'm sure there was some news item. I never went and looked. They'll make up something to fit it regardless. So, but then we had this next trend up, and then pretty much sideways, and we just kind of started that stair stepping up again. But the key of this thing is we're back above 3,000, if you can believe that. Not long ago, we were thinking we were probably going to get another leg down, and suddenly this market is back above 3,000. You just can't keep this thing down. And every time I think that we're finally going to get a sell-off in the ES, used to every time we get one, I'd tell you it was a great buying opportunity. I didn't do that this last time because just looking at the chart, everything looked like we were going to get another leg down, and it never happened. We just went higher. And so don't ever be careful trying to sell this market, because you'll probably end up in trouble. But anyway, there's a lot of trades today, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to get to it. Let's back out. Really, by the time you got a chance to trade today at 7 o'clock, we were already working lower. You would think that we might try to make another move up, but it just never came. We did get an overshoot on this thing, but a lot of times you get that in the overnight, and it doesn't amount to much. If anything, it doesn't really matter. But notice we're working up, and you don't get back to the upper side and then turn. And that's a clue right there that we're losing momentum by not getting back to that trend. We overshot it here, and we can't even get back to it here. So that's a clue that we're losing momentum. Plus, you got that first leg up, and then you got the second one. And we came up short, so still 2 legs up there, and then we sold off. But let's back out, go through these trades because there's quite a few of them. I'll try to get far enough out where we can see it really well. You almost just have to back way out to see this stuff. So, okay, let's get started here. 7 o'clock comes right in here on this move down. I had somebody taking a trade up here. Really after about 6:30, you probably can trade. This is a little early here, and I had at least one person ask me about this failed second entry at the key entry point. But with coming up short right up here, that's your clue that you're probably going to get a break here. So just be real careful on the entry. That bar is fairly bullish, and it is a second entry. Notice that's a double top, so I would count that as a new high. You could count that first entry and that as second entry, but I'd count this as a new high because that's a fairly bearish move down. And so draw your little trend line, but really by the time this second entry actually triggers here, you notice by the time you get down here, the bars are going sideways. 1, 2, 3, and so you got 4 bars in a row stacked side by side pretty much, and this one has a small body. That's congestion. So that's your next clue. Now there is some support here, going across here as well, but I wouldn't trust that. Not with congestion right there. You can kind of see that support running across there. So I wouldn't trust that, and especially when when it didn't break higher, and this one's just an inside bar to another doji. Now there's no doubt you got some congestion going across there. So just sit and wait and make sure this downtrend is over. Draw this trend line right here, just like I drew it, and go ahead and draw your resistance across there. And it ends up just being a range. So if you went long right here, now I also had somebody send me their chart, and they went long way down here. And by the time you get there, you got a first entry, second entry, third entry. That's a fourth entry, and they actually use that for the signal bar. Well, the lowest bar in the swing is always your signal bar, so that's going to be this bar. And look how neutral that is, and look what's going on here. That's just congestion. And now we're even closed twice below the EMA. So this is your first real sign of any true bullishness off of this whole move down. And notice you kind of got two legs, so you'll probably get a break and a move to a new low, and then you might get something that goes higher. So, but we end up just going sideways. And the first chance you really get to enter is right after 7 o'clock. Notice your resistance up here, and that's pretty much a double top, so you're moving down, you get a first entry, second entry. You don't care as much about second entries when you're in a range. You're just looking at a failed break lower. But if it is a second entry and you get a nice signal bar too, then you may take this. Notice how you got a lot of room back to the EMA. You got the little failed break lower. The trend is really up, so that's a pretty good trade. You might be able to catch that, and it might run all the way up. At the very least, you're probably coming back to the EMA, and you're probably going to test this again, and it may make a new high. And so I like this entry. It's still a little bit aggressive. You're probably better off to wait on the higher low, which comes here. And if you had a good signal bar, I'd say probably go long there, as long as you got room to get out, which you do here. But I don't get a very good signal bar, so that's too neutral of a bar. But notice what does happen. You come back up here and you test this, and this is a very neutral bar, so not a good signal bar. However, it goes higher and then turns down. And so when it went out this other side like that, you could go short right there. The key is you can't put your signal, no matter how you enter this, you got to wait for this bar to close and know where to put your safety stop. You can't just put it one tick above this bar or whatever. You got to wait till this bar closes. So prior to that, it would need to be above the last swing, which would need to be up here, which still ends up being in the same spot in the end. And notice that you got a new low. It's a first entry, second entry. But you're just trying to get a scalp out of this, and lo and behold, if you catch it, it runs down. And I know somebody else went long here. They're looking at coming down first entry, and there's a second entry right there. But look at that trend down. That's your first bar that even starts to show any bullishness. And you've already had one leg here, and you got a two-leg correction, so you may even get a measured leg. So that's, again, that you shouldn't be looking for longs in here. You would at least look for a second leg down to right here, and we're nowhere near that yet. So, and then I would measure this leg and look for another one there. Doesn't matter, we just keep going lower, but there's no long here. Just wait, and we come back. And notice where you're working up, you get a close outside, and you get a short right here on a second entry. Notice that moving up first entry, and then you're moving back up second entry. That's not a great signal bar. It's kind of iffy. And you don't know for sure that this is your trend line because it hasn't been, that's just your second touch really. But the way I found that, I drew it off these lows right across here and drug it up. Originally I had it just a little lower like so, but I ended up tightening it up as we got a little more price action so I could see what was going on a little better. But that's a second entry short. You got a trend working up, you get a close outside, move to a new high. That bar is real close to not being good enough, but we're not quite to a measured leg, and we probably even want to look for a leg like that. So I marked it red, but it's close to being a green one. And so that's your target right there. And we just continue to go lower from there. But notice that we're working down. You get a first entry, and then you get a second entry that fails, and it's a failure when it goes lower right there. And that's right at the midline. So you would expect prices maybe headed down here. And that's a fairly bearish bar. I marked this one green because there's not a lot of room to get out there. That's a nice bearish bar, but there's just not a lot of room to get out. And there is a little bit of sideways action there too. So it's a little questionable. Notice how it didn't go anywhere really until it finally drops on down. And then you just kind of get a repeat. Looks just like that one. And you see that we kind of continue to repeat that over and over. Here you got enough room to get out before the lows. Here you're going short right into the lows on both of those. So I just don't recommend them. Even though, and that's the other thing, this does confirm, notice your first two swings there, and that does confirm this trend line. And these are both off of it, so that's a reason to consider it, but look how sideways that is. I think you're better off to wait. And then we get a little overshoot, a break, and notice you got a low, you make a first entry, and then this broke higher and turned back down all in one. That's a second entry short, all in one bar. And that's right at, that does confirm your key entry point, so definitely I'd take that now. And your EMA's right there as well. You get a little lower high here right off the trend line. It actually breaks higher again and turns and goes out the other side. And we see that multiple times. Here's another setup right there, but that bar's too neutral. But look what happens. It breaks higher and turns down. That's a repeat pattern. We've seen it 1, 2, 3 times in a row. Then you come back up and you just get a first entry there, but you get your second entry right here. It breaks higher and comes, I think it breaks higher here and turns back down. That's where you'd want to go short. I don't think I'd go short right here, right into that double bottom. You got to have a little more room than that. So you could actually wait till this closes, let it tick past it, and then drop a limit order back where you would have gone short one tick below that. You wouldn't have got filled on it, so it wouldn't have mattered. But actually, it would have come back here and filled it, but by that time, coming off these lows, I wouldn't take it. And that's the other thing too. We already had a little bit of an overshoot here, so this is still questionable. And we just start going higher. There is a little bit of a second entry right there, but again, you just got 3 bars stacked up. This one looks like a really no body or doesn't have much body or a very small body. So again, it's questionable. There's a little bit of room back to the EMA. I'm not sure if there's enough room to get out on that. I just wouldn't take it. And that gives you your first break of that trend line too. And now you're moving up, but again, you just don't get a setup here. Look at all that congestion. You get this is really your signal bar. It makes the highest swing. And it's a shame because it's a nice move, but if you're just patient, a few minutes later you get another one of those second entries where it breaks higher and then turns back down, and that's a second entry short. All under the EMA, double top right there. Failed second entry long because there's a new high, first entry, second entry. Several reasons to like that one. And then you actually come back right here. It breaks higher and turns and goes out the other side again. Since this one is at the key entry point, I went ahead and marked it. If you didn't enter there, I wouldn't have entered this one because then we just kind of keep going sideways and you got too much congestion. Comes back right here. Notice that new high, first entry, and there's 2 legs down, a second entry, and it's a key entry point right there, and a fairly bearish bar. And you could look at that as congestion with a little breakout. Off it goes. There's a lower high right here, but you don't want to take that one. And then it comes back and gives you another second entry right at the key entry point. Notice that low, first entry, then it went higher again, and that's still, when it breaks lower right there, that's a second entry short. Even though it didn't make a high or low, it still made a double bottom, which is a correction coming this way. There's a failed second entry long there. I didn't mark it because it's just a little bit, it's a fairly bearish bar. It's a fairly small bar, but it's not back to the key entry point. It's not back to the EMA, but it does get back inside the original trend line and test it. So you could argue for that one to be green, but we've been away from the EMA for a while, and so the longer you stay away from it, the more dangerous it gets to keep trading it. So just remind yourself of that. I'll mark it green, but that's because it is possibly a long trap, and you can see how it shot down real quick. But then notice it's not very long afterwards. Now we're going the other way, and that's what usually happens to you. And so notice we're moving up. You get a first entry, and then you get a second entry that fails. Although that's the first break of this trend channel coming down. We did get an overshoot though, so a lot of times you don't get a retest of the low. So, but it's just a little risky. That is your first break, so you'll probably try to make a new high, but I'd wait on the second entry, and it comes right here, and you get a double test then. So that was your better entry. Then it comes back, and it gives a double test of this support area. You made the low, you test it once, you test it twice. So I didn't mark this one, but this is another possibility. So you could at least argue for that to be green on a little failed break lower. And I'd draw my trend line there. You actually could have drawn it off the highs and drug it down. But then we work higher again, and you come back, and that's just the first entry. I'd at least wait on this higher low, but this is a huge, but it actually breaks lower and turns and goes out. I didn't mark it because we already had a break here, and there's not a lot of room back to this resistance across here. I would have had that line drawn about like so. And so there's just not much room there. Even though that's a trend up, I'm just not that crazy about it. Again, it's one you could argue to probably be green. But if you just wait, notice then you get a first entry, and then you get a second entry, and these make matching lows. So really, when that went higher and broke above, you could go long there. You can't really use that for your signal bar. You have to assume that is, and that was a second entry. So maybe you let it break higher and drop a limit order back here, just to make sure you get that break higher and make sure see how this bar, because notice that you got that resistance, and so you got to have room to get out there. And I probably would have had this line a little higher at that point, up here like so. Just make sure you got room to get out. Runs on up, and notice how we came up a little short right there. We actually had the break. We came up a little short, and there's two legs up. And so no matter why this happened, the price action still told you it was coming. It's perfect price action. Notice the channel working up. You get the break. You get two measured legs up, and boom. So is that a coincidence or what? You tell me. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just asking the question. Is that a coincidence or what? But that's perfect price action, exactly the way we teach it. And look at it sell off. I mean, that's no normal sell off. That's 72 to 88 at least. That's a 15-point move, and that was at 1038, and it bottomed out at 10. That's in a minute. That's 15 points in less than a minute. Some kind of news or something. But the price action told you it was coming, whether the news did it or not. So I'll ask again: is that a coincidence? But I guarantee, I used to think that the news caused these moves and stuff, but I know better now. I know what they'll do is they'll write the news to fit this, and they'll say some news item, and maybe the news item contributed to it, but the price action still told you it was coming. So you can't get any better than that. You got your break, two measured legs up, and what does that tell you is going to happen? You're going to get a correction. It may not be a sell-off like this, but you're going to get it may just be a correction like this that goes sideways for a while. But instead, you get a 15 to 16 point move in less than a minute. And really, there's just no good setup to get short there. It's a shame, but there's not really. And then we start working up. It looks like it's going to be a little spike in channel, but then it just goes sideways. So you can't enter in here. There's no good entry there. Runs up and it does the same thing again. Again, just kind of works sideways, but it pushes above this time. And there's a little hidden second entry there. Notice that eye, and you come back first entry, come back second entry. There's a little hidden second entry. It's at the key entry point. That's congestion though, and the highs are right there. I just think you're better off to skip that. And then you finally get a second entry here. Notice that eye, first entry, and then second entry. And that's a fairly bullish bar. And look at that support across there. There's a double test there. There's enough room to get out. Just go long. And you might, this short was really tempting. So you might have gone short there because there's a double test. And the only problem is that's your first break and you don't have a new high, although you may not get one. You're really playing the range here, and there is a double test, and there is room to get out, although I probably would have moved this up by now, and when you do, it gets real questionable right there. But this is where it would have started here. So if you got enough room, I'm okay with you going short on that double test in a range. The better trade is to stay with the trend that's going up, and notice we get the failure out the bottom, and there's a new high first. So there's a second entry too, but it's a failed break, fairly bullish bar. I like that one. There's a higher low here, but again, look, we're going sideways. You got two bars with no dojis. There's at least three or more. But there is a failed second entry short, and this is a relatively bearish bar. It breaks lower, so when it turns higher, it's probably going to trap people. The problem is you don't have enough room to get out right there. You probably wouldn't have even got in this trade because it just gaps over and keeps going. But if you had a little different setup and you could get in there with enough room to get out, you may take that trade because there is a short trap there. And then it fails out the top, although you don't really get a... Notice there's a new low, first entry, and that's your second entry. And I guarantee there's probably somebody watching that went short right there. In this uptrend, in this sideways channel, right in the middle of it with congestion. But that's a counter trend trade because the trend has been up for a while. So if you're going to err to one side or another, err to the long side. And you get another failed breakout here, and it really makes a double bottom. That's a nice reversal. It opened here and was trading way down here and closed on its high. Look how far we are away from the EMA. And I would have had this move down here probably by now. So I like going long just to ride it back to the EMA and maybe back to the top. There it goes. And you really just don't get another chance to enter off the highs. That would have been a fairly decent signal bar, but then you get this one that goes sideways, and then you get the doji. So just skip that. You don't want to be entering in the middle again. And there's no entry off the high. There's no entry off the low until we start trending higher. And then notice that new low, there's a first entry, and then you run up, and that's a second entry short that bounces and confirms that trend line, a nice bullish bar. There's not a lot of room left there, and you're a little ways away from the EMA, so it's never a good entry. But this is congestion, and that's a little failed break lower, and there is enough room to get out, so you may take that one. But notice now you come back to the trend line, first entry, and then you pull back again. There's a second entry long. Then it comes back and you get that double test. And this is a repeat pattern of what we saw just a little bit ago down here. So just go long right there. And that takes you in the 2 o'clock hour. So this was a great trading day, and I got this done within 25 minutes, believe it or not. I felt like I rushed there at the end, but I just about had to keep this thing 20 or 25 minutes. A lot of trades a day, so I did good doing this one in 25 minutes. But again, there's the bigger picture. You got a huge trend down and a huge trend up. And once you start to get a trend like this, just go long. And once you see a trend like this, just go short, basically. Don't be trying to counter trend trade. So I got to wrap it up or I'm going to go over 25 minutes, but I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.